Hello, everyone. I'm Danny, and welcome to our podcast. Today, Great.com talks with Nina Fashion, the Executive Director of International Rhino Foundation. If you don't know them yet, please do. They work to ensure the survival of rhinos through strategic partnerships, targeted protection, and scientifically sound interventions. And just before we begin, remember, if you're new here to this podcast, subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. Hello, Nina. Welcome to Great Talks.
Hi, Danny. Thank you so much for having me and talking about rhinos.
It's truly my pleasure. I'm super excited to talk to you today. It's my first, as I said to you before this interview, it's my first time talking about it. And I learned a lot doing the research for this podcast. And I would like to begin understanding or helping our listeners to understand what is the rhino crisis that we're facing right now, because we have many species that are really endangered. And I think it would be nice for us to know how this is developing and what is behind it.
Yeah, thank you for starting with the most important question. There are 5 species of rhinos in the world. 2 are in Africa, 1 in India, and 2 in Indonesia, which I think is the surprise to most people that there are 2 rhino species in Indonesia. All 5 species are imperiled to some degree. So with all 5 species of rhino, there are fewer than 30,000. They would fill up less than half a football stadium. Their numbers have declined dramatically over the years, primarily due to poaching, also some habitat loss and other issues, but primarily due to poaching and human impacts.
Wow, that's super sad. And well, I was surprised when doing the research about the Indonesian species. So it was nice to know that. But it's also, it's really terrible. I'm just going to do a quick detour here and tell people to go to our website. There is rhinos.org. You can actually have this, it's pretty visual. I like it very much. You can have this information under the About Rhinos menu, and then you have the crisis there. And you can see how far these numbers have gone, like how the situation has like escalated from having around 500,000 rhinos in the beginning of the 20th century to these few numbers that we have now. And this is absurd, I think. And how has the International Rhino Foundation working to help that situation, to prevent that?
Yes, thanks. We work with all 5 species. And so we work with on-the-ground partners in Indonesia and India and several African range states, several African countries. And we use, I'm always saying that we use all the tools in the toolbox. So we do a variety of things with our partners on the ground to try to stop poaching, to try to protect habitat, to do monitoring and protection of rhinos, including everything up, including orphan care, veterinary services in some areas. So we just work with people to do pretty much everything in the gamut of options for taking care of rhinos.
Wow, and that must require, and this is just my curiosity here, that must require a quite big structure, because we're talking about different countries, even in different continents. So how does that all kind of work?
Well, so we're actually a fairly small organization, so we punch above our weight in terms of our impact. Really, there are just 8 of us in the US, but again, working collaboratively with partners around the globe, we're able to increase our impact. So, and the International Rhino Foundation both conducts our own conservation measures, and we also fund them. So we have a mixed model of doing our own work and funding others.
Oh, I get it. That makes makes sense, and that's really does increase your outreach. And well, now moving to some specific point on that, one of your actions there, the Sumatran rhino conservation. I'm saying that right? It's Sumatran.
Mm-hmm, yes,
yeah, great. So it's the Sumatran Rhino Conservation and Rescue Program. How is that working? That is in Indonesia, right?
It's in Indonesia, and the Indonesian rhinos are very interesting. I mean, not only do people not know about them, but Indonesia is the 4th most populous country in the planet. It's got such a massive humanity, And it's one of the most biodiverse, rich countries as well. So there aren't just rhinos there. There are orangutans and tigers and tapirs and all sorts of unbelievable wildlife that are coexisting with humans. So there are two rhinos there, the Javan and the Sumatran. Both have fewer than 80 individuals left. The Javan rhino is considered to be increasing because they had been at a low of around 50 rhinos, and now they're about 75. And so while that's not a secure population by any means, at least it's going in the right direction. With the Sumatran rhino, the government of Indonesia with partners from around the globe are working kind of in an all hands on deck manner to save that species from extinction. Their numbers are going down, and they face some terrible challenges in terms of being isolated, not finding each other to reproduce. Even the animals in a captive breeding facility have troubles with reproduction. They have reproductive challenges. So it's a very serious situation. And back to your original question, again, this is just there are a coalition of groups that work to support the government of Indonesia in terms of saving this Sumatran rhino.
Oh, I get it. And actually, thank you for bringing this point of the challenges, because again, you brought something to me that I hadn't thought before, that it's not just putting the rhinos together, right? They're not just going to see each other and say, hey, let's have a baby. Let's have a little rhino. It's more than that. So what are the other challenges that you face besides that?
Yeah, so you're right. They live in the very dense jungles, and there aren't enough. It's not a robust enough population that they're not tripping over each other in the wild. They need to find each other, and then these reproductive challenges, because they're not finding each other to breed, are a huge issue. There's still a risk of poaching there, which is one of the main factors that had their numbers decline in the first place. There's still habitat loss. They're bumping up against human communities. And then in the case of Javan rhinos exist all in one population. It's almost kind of the opposite from Sumatran, that are the few animals that are left are spread out. With Javan rhinos, they're all in one population, and that brings risks of its own. So if you have animals all in one population, heaven forbid a disease goes through, they could all be wiped out by disease. And they live near Anak Krakatoa, the volcano that did go off several years ago with human fatalities and such. And so there are natural disasters that could happen as well. So, gosh, there are just really a variety of threats that are making recovery for these critters tougher.
Wow, I again, I'm blown here. I didn't think about that either. So yeah, it's way more complicated than I figured. Of course, there is this problem of poaching that you've mentioned before. That is, I feel like the one that we can. Well, I'm hesitating to say easier to tackle, because it's not easy, right? It's not easy to prevent poaching. I thought it was easier because it's something that we can sort of control, but it's not the case, right? It must be really hard to fight that point.
Interesting point, right? As opposed to animals not being able to reproduce, which is a challenging scientific problem. You have poaching, that's a challenging human-led problem, and poaching is a challenge whether we're talking about Africa or Asia. Poachers are involved in global criminal syndicates. I mean, it's a global, highly funded, highly organized criminal organizations that are going after rhinos. And the people on the ground, even if you catch poachers on the ground, those are just, the small potatoes in these larger criminal organizations. And so it's a tough thing to tackle. One of the primary things the International Rhino Foundation does is support anti-poaching measures in Asia and Africa through a variety of mechanisms. We support rangers. We pay for ranger salaries in Indonesia and in Africa. We have experts to conduct trainings so that the rangers are equipped with the best skills and knowledge they have to be able to protect themselves, because it's an incredibly dangerous job, as well as to make arrests that ultimately lead to convictions in what can be corrupt systems. So we fund those. We fund anti-poaching dogs, which have been an incredible tool and asset. And we fund technology, which is kind of mind-blowing. I always confess to not even understanding all the technology that's being used now in anti-poaching, but everything from license plate recognition to try to track vehicles that are associated with known poachers that maybe go from one reserve to another in Africa, say, to cameras, to all sorts of high-tech stuff that we're using to try to stay one step ahead of these well-funded criminals.
Well, I'm actually really surprised about this high technology possibility, and I'm actually happy, because I was always worried about, okay, what is facial recognition can do? It can be bad, but I didn't think about this good possibility. So yeah, that's awesome. That's really incredible.
Yeah, it's important, because poaching, frankly, is less a conservation issue, but even though it has huge conservation impacts, and more a policing issue. It's a law enforcement issue. You know, these are criminals, and their target is rhinos, because rhino horn is very valuable, not in a frankly real tangible sense, but people believe it has value, and so therefore it has value. And so it's a law enforcement issue, and we try to support law enforcement.
Wow, it's really impressive. I'm still here thinking about the possibilities now. And yeah, I've also thought that, come on, it's 2022. We've been through a pandemic. We've been through a lot of changes, and people are still stuck with some mindsets about this things. It happens with different things with animals like fur and so on. And it's just ridiculous. And but let's move a little to something happier.
Yes, we need to end certainly before we end on a couple.
Yeah, yeah. So some good impacts. During my research, I saw a video in your YouTube channel about some baby rhino being. Yeah, but it was like in May 5th, something like that. So yeah, this is great news. What other good impacts do you have to share with us?
Yes, well, thank you. Yes, we're very excited about a baby rhino in Indonesia. And I should mention that rhinos have a gestation period of 15 months. They're pregnant for 15 months. It's a very long time. So the mom, by the way, that's Rosa. That's the mom of the baby on the wall behind me. Yeah, isn't Rosa cutie? She's a tiny little Sumatran rhino. And she's very friendly with humans. That's just her personality. But she had 8 miscarriages prior to this baby being born. So when we knew that she had been bred and got pregnant, there's a lot of excitement, but everybody was terrified because she had these prior miscarriages. And so, but because their gestation period is so long, we're, biting our nails for 15 months, waiting and hoping that this one would work. And so, yes, we got a baby girl about, what was that, 7 weeks ago? Time flies during a pandemic, but yeah, so we have a little baby now. She's adorable. I totally encourage your listeners and viewers to get on rhinos.org to look at the photos. We commend the government of Indonesia and the Sumatran Rhino Sanctuary staff for bringing this baby into the world, because it was not easy. In fact, she had a very difficult birth, but the veterinarians there kind of saved her life, and mom and baby are doing great.
Yay, those are awesome news. Yeah, even though I know nothing about rhinos, it looked like a difficult moment for everyone there. Like everyone kind of looked super, okay, I'm holding my breath here, everything's going to be fine. But yay, it turned out great. And this is a wonderful news. Do you have any other idea or perspective of how great was the impact of the foundation so far in the overall population? Well,
so The International Rhino Foundation started, we had our 30th anniversary last year. So we're 30 years old. And we started as a response to a crisis in Black rhinos in Zimbabwe, very specifically, until we realized that our organization was needed for all five and a broader cause. And I will say that even though Black rhinos are still imperiled, their numbers have been increasing. And so that's another ray of light, that Black rhino populations, especially in Zimbabwe, where we have an amazing team on the ground. And then the other one, I don't know what our time is like, but I can't.
That's okay.
Okay, I've got to mention greater one-horn rhinos, which have been doing amazing. Again, kudos to the governments of Nepal and Indonesia, where the greater one-horn rhino exists, because they have cracked down on poaching. They only had one rhino poached last year in those countries, which is amazing. Greater one-horn rhinos had gotten to a low of about 100 individuals. I mean, that population had crashed, and now they're up to over 4,000 greater one-horn rhinos, which is not quite yet a secure population, but my gosh, again, for an animal that has such a long gestation period and only gives birth to one, it's not like they're having litters and, you know, popping out lots of babies at a time. You know, it's a slog to make a baby rhino. So going from 100 to 4,000 is incredible. So these ray of lights, baby Sumatran rhino, Black rhino populations increasing slowly but surely, and greater one-horn rhinos in India and Nepal doing quite well. So we take hope where we can.
Yeah, but those are wonderful news. I see this is this is the way to almost go to the end of this episode today. That's with such a good news. It's wonderful numbers, and congratulations to you guys. I'm really happy to hear that. And I honestly hope you can keep doing this for a real long time, like protecting those rhinos. And to that, I move to my final question for you today. And probably I begin with the important one, and I'm going to end with the important one. That is, how can people help out your efforts right now?
Yeah, thank you for asking that, because it is important. At International Rhino Foundation, we consider all of us who love rhinos to be part of Team Rhino. And so I invite your listeners to join Team Rhino. If they hop on our website at rhinos.org, we have steps people can take to help, which includes everything from buying a t-shirt. You can see my team and I, all we do is wear rhino t-shirts. It's a little embarrassing. To spreading the word about rhinos, learning more. So listening to your podcast today is, you know, such a great first step. And of course, making a contribution is always helpful for anti-poaching efforts, monitoring efforts, and the other activities that are needed on the ground to save these species.
Wow, that's wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I again urge our listeners to go to our website, rhinos.org. You can easily find that a way to help them out. You can donate, you can adopt a rhino, you can shop, as you said. And another thing that I tell you is, if you want to hear more about the news of how the population of rhinos are growing and how their works are moving on, you can check that out on the State of the Rhino summary that is actually a better word for that. That's not coming to me right now. A report. Yeah. Yes. So you can find that State of the Rhino report. You can check that on their website. They do it annually, if I'm not wrong.
We do, every September 22nd, which is World Rhino Day.
Perfect. Then you can check that out and see how the situation is improving and how they are actually doing something great for the world. And thank you so very much.
Oh, and you know,
one final thing is, yeah, go for it.
Since we mentioned the baby rhino, I would encourage people to go to International Rhino Foundation's IRF's YouTube channel, because we put up some good videos there, not just the baby Sumatran, but baby Javan rhino. We love baby rhinos, right? So anyway,
they are super cute.
They're adorable, right? So anyway, if you want to see cute videos, go to our YouTube channel too.
Yeah, please do that. And thank you so much, Nina, for talking to us. It was a truly wonderful talk today.
Thank you, Danny, for having me.
And for everyone else listening, thank you so much for staying here with us today. And remember, if you enjoyed this episode, Press subscribe and like on YouTube or in your podcast app, because that will show the algorithms that this is an important conversation and more people can learn about the importance of the International Rhino Foundation. I see you guys at the next episode. Bye.